Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. My fellow XRP holders, you may be getting way fewer Spark tokens than what you were told to expect. In fact, Flare may never create 85% of the Spark tokens that they initially planned to create. What the what? Now, look, to any of you, if this sounds bad or scary or whatever at the outset, just to hear them out here, it's actually not so bad. And in all likelihood, at this point at least, I even might be in favor of this, and I'll have to explain why, as I will in due time here. But fear not, there's nothing shady or bad going on here. But I know that this is, I already saw it on social media, like just this being discussed, it's already alarming people. And I understand why, but that's why I want to try and clear this up, because in my humble opinion, it's not such a big deal either way. Not in the end, but I do want to be clear at the outset, I don't have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos as a fun hobby about Ripple and XRP and Spark tokens from time to time. But that's all that's going on here. I want to give a shout out quick to a couple people that tagged me in this story, because it was Flare Network's official account, it's what's on your screen here right now, that put out this article I'm going to run through with you that identified, that led people to identify this potential concern, if you want to word it like that delicately. And so shout out to Vanderdecken, who tagged me in this, as well as XRP community member Frecky. Thank you very much, both of you, for doing that. And if anybody else did, I'm not snubbing you, I promise. It's just I happen to notice a couple right here, but the notifications go off like crazy, and I do miss stuff. But please know that if you tagged me in this, even if I didn't identify you in the video, I'm sorry, I wish I would have caught it, but I do appreciate it either way. Please know that. And so into this. This is titled Applying Governance to the Spark Distribution, and this is from the official Flare Network's website, and they will be soon, we don't know exactly when yet, but they will be soon issuing the initial Spark token distribution, which I'm still looking forward to. All right, so here it reads as follows. There have been a number of questions regarding the tax impact of the Spark, which is FLR for short, that's the Spark token, distribution in various jurisdictions. Specifically, there is a concern that due to the Spark token becoming priced subsequent to the launch of mainnet, that the long-term distribution of 3% per month, but not the initial distribution of 15%, could be considered as income for tax purposes. Various parties claiming authority on the subject matter, predominantly from a U.S. perspective, have publicly given widely different opinions. And so look, I definitely don't have a tax background either, so don't take anything I'm saying here as gospel, but happy to share what I believe to be the case here. And so it is my understanding that if you get an airdrop, if you're in the United States specifically, and I am a United States citizen, I live in the Midwest, whatever it's worth at the time, there will be tax implications based on that. So if you get the airdrop and it's worth $0, then my understanding, which again I admit could be incorrect, but this is my understanding, is there not going to be severe tax implications. So even with the Spark token trading on BitTrue and Poloniex right now, understand that's not the real Spark token, that's just an IOU. It is not the same thing. The Spark token's not live, so that shouldn't matter at all, that the IOU's already being traded, in case anybody was wondering. Anyway, and then this continues. As followers of the Flare blog will know, the purpose of the lengthy distribution is to make sure that liquidity aligns with the most efficient economic functions of the FTSO and F-asset protocols. And then they provide a link with a refresher there, which I'm not going to go run through for the sake of this video, just go on too long. But they do cite here, other than this, I'll cite the top, I guess. You can see here, and this was written in 2020 at some point, Flare is creating 100 billion Spark tokens at the outside of the network. How these are distributed and when they become available is discussed below, and it's still obviously somewhat up in the air. But the good news is ultimately everybody's effectively going to have a say in it that should have a say in it, the community, the governance. And so anyway, it continues here. At Flare, we have commissioned research and advice into the U.S. tax implications by a respected tax scholar. This research has resulted in the distribution option number 1 below, which involves the recipient burning a small amount of Spark to buy the remaining distribution which was briefly discussed by Hugo, which is a Flare co-founder, in a recent public conversation. This option will not be implemented by default, but will be brought to governance vote as discussed below. So it's a potential option. That's what he's saying right there, which adds, to me, I'm about to share the specifics, but it does seem to me, at least on the surface, and I'm willing to be persuaded for sure, definitely. I want to hear other perspectives before I feel like I have a firm opinion on this, but just my initial reaction is it seems completely unnecessary. And I will articulate why in just a moment here, but let me get a little bit further in this piece. With regards to... Wait, that's where I left off, right? Let me make sure. Yeah, here we go. With regards to that or any other potential option, a number of considerations that need to be taken into account are, but not limited to, the following. There's 3 listed here. Number 1, the size of the impact of the existing plan on the ecosystem, i.e., the number of people and quantity of Spark that the existing plan without the burn mechanism affects. Number 2, the veracity and perceived veracity of any legal advice received by Flare and the opinions of other experts that have been put forward. And number 3, the perception of Spark recipients. And I'll just tell you, reading through things initially, I kind of get the feeling that, and I don't know what the percentage breakdown would be, but it does seem to me that a lot of people are concerned about changing anything other than what they had initially expected. I currently am not among those, but again, like I said, willing to be persuaded for sure. Because this just came out like 9 hours ago, so there's a lot to take in. I want to hear a bunch of other perspectives before I have a solid opinion on this. But anyway, check this out. Quantifying these factors at this early point is an impossible task, but thankfully, there is a way to understand what the recipients of Spark tokens feel about the various options, and that is to put the distribution decision directly into the hands of Flare token holders through Flare governance. And so there you go right there. The good news is everybody's going to have a say, and whatever everybody wants, that's apparently what's going to happen. Well, not literally everybody. Not everybody's going to agree, but you get the cut of my jib, right? It makes me think of something I've been saying for some time, which is that any decentralized system is only decentralized so far as it does what the willing participants are, or it only does what only decentralized insofar as willing participants choose to abide by system rules and participate. So if you're going to participate, you have to play within the sandbox that's set from the outset here. But like that's the nature of a decentralized system. Not everybody is going to get what they want. That would be anarchy. So we do not want that. And so anyway, the Spark distribution will now be set up as follows. So this is what I'm about to read to you. This is effectively what we've been expecting and what's basically been promised from the outset. Number 1, at the outset, excuse me, 15% of the total distribution of 100 billion Spark tokens will be made. Number 2, there will then be a 5-month period whereby the community can come to consensus over at least 2 possible governance proposals outlined below, or any other option put forward by governance. And number 3, if no new option wins the distribution, will continue from month 6 as previously defined at 3% of the initial 100 billion. So to sum it up, at the outset, you'll get 15% of the total Spark tokens that you owed. That's what's planned here. Out of the 100 billion total supply, 15% goes out into the wild. And then from month 6 onward, you get 3%, my understanding, if I'm reading that correct, is each month until everything's fully distributed. So it would take years, right? I think just a few years, though. And so here's the 2 proposals, and this is where things could get a little bit different. Option number 1, buy through burn. This option is based on the legal research commissioned by Flare. A recipient of Spark would receive the initial 15% as previously detailed at the inception of the network. The recipient would then, optionally, burn a small percentage of their Flare tokens in order to buy the remaining distribution. The remaining distribution would then occur at 3% per month from month 6. And so right there, this is where I have questions here. I don't know exactly what that would look like. Who would I be buying them from? What would the price be? Is there an open market price at that point? Are exchanges trading them other than just IOUs? I don't know. So that part I'm just like, but I will say this. It seems to me completely unnecessary. It really does, and let me read a little bit further. And again, I promise I will explain why. But it just seems like jumping through a hoop we don't need to jump through for the purpose of tax purposes. Whereas, really, if everything's just distributed at the outset, you don't have to deal with it. And so you would think, but then we get less Spark tokens. I know, but hold on, I'll get to it. But they also write here regarding option 1. The Legal Research Commission argues that the remaining distribution would then have been purchased and thus subject to capital gains tax upon sale instead of income tax upon receipt. A full governance proposal for this will be drafted and released together with the legal memo upon which the proposal will be based. Now, that part of it makes perfect sense to me because you're taxed differently in the United States if what you've received is based on an airdrop versus what you received is purchased. And if you're purchased, then it's just based, capital gains tax, and so you get long-term capital gains tax rate, which maxes out at 20% in the United States if you hold for at least a year. And so if you're purchasing it, that's what you'd be looking at. But it could be much steeper if it's based on a current market price of an airdrop. And so I totally get why they're bringing this up, but it still seems like a hoop that I don't feel we need to jump through. If anything, like here, actually, option number 2 is so short. Let me read it, and then I'm going to explain everything. Option number 2, distribution halt. This option would halt any further distributions. The remaining 85 billion would not come into existence. This would turn the initial 15 billion Spark tokens into the total distribution. And so, to me, if you're concerned about getting fewer Spark tokens, like, hey, that's not what was promised to me, you need to think just a little bit harder on that one. Because what you'll ultimately see once the Spark token is traded on a bunch of exchanges the world over is that the Spark token will be much higher than it otherwise would have been. And so it's not that one is better than the other in that sense. Whether you have a higher price and lower quantity of Spark token held, or you have a higher quantity of Spark token held and a lower price, it nets out to about the same. It's not going to matter. And what I'm saying here, to be clear, I hope this is easily understandable, I'm saying that supply and demand is going to do its thing. If there's fewer Spark tokens available on the market and the same number of people bidding on them, the price will be higher than it otherwise would be. This does not matter. And so this is why I'm sitting here thinking, well, why do I need to go through jumping through these hoops of burning something that I'm receiving and then buying, and then I've still got a bunch of questions on what that even looks like? I'm like, why do I want to mess with that? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So right now, the way I'm thinking it, as long as 15 billion Spark tokens is enough to sustain the ecosystem for the long haul, as long as that quantity is enough, as long as we don't have any legitimate concerns about that, then I would rather just have them all burnt. That's the way I feel at this point. And again, I reserve the right to change my opinion, but I'd rather just have the not burnt, just not created. I'd rather have 15 billion created instead of 100 billion created if it means I don't have to worry about tax nonsense. I personally would prefer that because it doesn't matter. Whether there's 100 billion and that's it, or there's 15 billion and that's it, it doesn't matter to me at all. Again, as long as I stated, as long as the people that are running the tech here think that would be a sufficient quantity. There is one other small thing that did jump into my Moon Lambo brain worth considering. I'm not convinced it's that big of a deal, but worth talking about, is if cryptocurrencies that look cheaper, that is to say, you can spend $100 and get a lot more of them than perhaps some other cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies that look cheaper, there is an argument, and I haven't seen data to indicate whether or not there's much validity to this, though I think it stands to reason that it could. If a cryptocurrency is cheaper and you can buy like 11 billion of them, I think some people might be persuaded to jump in and purchase a whole bunch of those rather than something else, which would, if they did that, and it's a stupid way of looking at it, but a lot of retail speculators are stupid, frankly. And so if they look at it that way, and that does mean supply and demand plays out there, even if idiots are jumping in and buying it, it would push the price up. Okay, so that's something to consider. I'm not convinced that it's that big of a deal necessarily either way, but it could be. This is something that all the XRP haters out there, they've just ragged on XRP for an endless number of reasons, but this is one of them. They say, oh yeah, it's just a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're doing. You can just buy a bunch of XRP because it looks cheap compared to Bitcoin, and that's the reason people are doing it. And then, of course, you look at somebody like billionaire Mike Novogratz, who runs a Galaxy Digital cryptocurrency hedge fund. Yeah, well, the Bitcoiners frankly wish that their cryptocurrency looked cheaper, and I'm not kidding. In fact, when Bitcoin was closer to $65,000, and I've talked about this on my channel before, billionaire Mike Novogratz came along and he said, I think that we've got a problem here because this Bitcoin at whatever it was, it may have been close to 65,000 at the time. He's like, this Bitcoin just looks too expensive. And so you know what his solution was? And this is what he wants the whole world to do. And good luck getting him to switch over. Maybe at some point it would happen. But he instead of determining the price of a Bitcoin, he wants to convert it to the price of a Satoshi. And so for those of you not in the know, each individual Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million. That means there are 100 million little pieces inside of each individual Bitcoin, with the smallest individual unit, 1 out of the 100 million, being known as a Satoshi. And so basically what he's saying is he wants Bitcoin to look cheaper so that more people will buy it. That's effectively what he's saying. And so there is an argument to be made there. I don't have data to have like a strong opinion on that, but it's something worth considering here. But I think, frankly, people that think like that, a lot of them, don't you think they must be mouth breathers? Like, just breathing real heavy, not really knowing what to, it's kind of drooling on themselves a little bit. It's like, oh my gosh, look at all these little miniature Bitcoin. Oh my gosh. I never knew I could have so many Satoshis. Like that's what I'm envisioning right there. So you tell me. I mean, I don't know. There's something to it probably, but are most people really looking at it like that? And even if so, like, is it going to actually matter that much? I don't know. I want the network to be successful. That's more important to me as somebody that is going to be holding Spark tokens. That is more important. But other than that, if that concern doesn't need to be a concern, if we can have a thriving, a Spark token ecosystem for decades and decades to come, if that's possible with just 15 billion Spark tokens instead of 100 billion, then let's just have 15. It doesn't matter. You're still going to have the same percentage relative to everybody else that is a Spark token holder. It's not going to change anything for you. So if you're somebody that the outside, like, oh, I want that more of my Spark tokens. Simmer down, son. It's going to be okay. I promise you, it's going to be okay. You're going to have the same percentage relative to everybody else that you would have gotten, whether it's 15 billion or 100 billion. It just does not matter. I promise you. But that being said, absolutely willing to be persuaded, so this is interesting food for thought. Let's open up the discussion. Please drop your comments below. Let me know if you think that I'm right or wrong in the way that I'm kind of leaning at this point in time. I need help in thinking through this because, again, it's only been out for 9 hours, and there's no way that I could be aware of every perspective, but this is how thoughtful people should come to conclusions. Just have adult people, debate back and forth their best ideas, let them state their case, and then determine what you think is most logical. And I haven't seen people debate this back and forth, so I'm absolutely willing to be persuaded here. But I'll go ahead and wrap up there. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.